Hello, my name is Joseph Rosenbaum, and this is my presentation for my final project that I'm hoping I labeled for the right class because I had two. Yeah, my final project for my seminar in advanced software development. So, I didn't really name this project because it's relatively simple. The hard part was keeping it running for a month throughout power outages. So, my project as it is implemented today was rather simple and straightforward. At a very high level, what it effectively does is every 30 minutes it checks to make sure it can connect to Google, and if it can connect to Google, it marks down a 0. If it cannot, it marks down a 1. And the idea behind the project was to record that data over a month, or originally longer, but due to some technical issues I'll discuss later, I only was able to run it for a little bit under a month. I think 23 days was how long I was able to get it running for. Somewhere around there. And then using that data, I would program the ability to see what percentage of data was... Sorry, I need this for later. What percentage of data, or what percentage of the time my internet access was available. Now, changes in scope, there weren't many changes in overall scope, but there were changes in how I did the project. So originally, my plan was to set up a network switch so I could hardline in a Raspberry Pi 4, running it in a closet, just to have an Ethernet cable, so I could guarantee that even if it did drop, it wasn't my Wi-Fi, it was just actually my connection to the ISP. Now, this ended up not happening, and I ended up what I had to get was a Raspberry Pi 400, which functionally is similar, but is in a different enough form factor that I could not store it where I originally wanted. I also ended up not being able to get a hold of a network switch by time I needed to start the project because of this, and we'll get to that. So the biggest technical challenge was getting this. When I initially went to order a Raspberry Pi 4, they were all sold out. Or they were starting to sell out, and by the time I had acquired the money for it, they had sold out. And so I had to go with the next best option to run a small computer 24/7, which was Raspberry Pi 400. I could not use my personal computer because of power draw concerns, and I needed to use it for other things. Now, the other downside is this took 3 to 4 weeks to arrive because of the shortages. And so between when I bought it, when I got it, and when I got the program running long term, I only had about a month and a half left. And that leads into the other big technical issue I had, which was about 4 days after I started running the project, we had a power outage that lasted 6 hours and bumped the data, and I had to restart it. However, it had apparently corrupted my IDE on the Pi 4 when it crashed, so it didn't run for another 3 weeks, or for another 2 weeks before I checked, realized it wasn't running, and had to move everything to a different IDE. That was fun. So the biggest success for me was learning Python. Learning some basics, learning that I really don't like that you can't tell the program what kind of variable it's going to be. You just name a variable. That's weird to me. Beyond that being strange, though, it's definitely an interesting programming language, and I'm probably going to have to learn more. So it's a good thing I learned some of it now. Now, the biggest failure in my mind is not being able to get as much data as I wanted due to some of the aforementioned technical hurdles and just troubles getting the stuff. Was I just wasn't able to run the project as long as I would have liked. In fact, I think I kept the project running till about 2 days ago. Either 2 days ago or late last night or early, sometime yesterday, I think, was when I ended up turning it off and acquiring the data. Now, some things I would make. I would set the reliability test to run in a closer interval. So as it stands now, it tests every 30 minutes. Arguably, I should have run it every 10 minutes, but I wanted to be absolutely certain that my testing wouldn't cause issues with my home network. And once I had started, I didn't want to use a different kind of methodology. I didn't want to change it halfway through and end up with a different methodology. That being said, I could have, in retrospect, changed it after I had to restart the data collection after the power outage. The other one would have been to try and get the supplies sooner, because that ended up being a bigger hassle than I expected it to be. So for tools, I used, obviously, Raspberry Pi 400. I used Java to import the data from the project and to calculate what percentage of the time, which I have a screenshot showing that. I will show that shortly. I used Python to run the software because Python runs better on the Pi. And so I used Python to have it run and actually support what was going on so that it was able to... Python was what I used to ping the internet repeatedly. Obviously, I used Raspbian OS and an SD card that came with the Pi 4. I had to use, my mouse and stuff, general things you need for programming. And my IDE of choice was actually Visual Studio Code, because I found out they had recently ported it over to the Raspberry Pi 4. And I wanted to give it a try, because I've used it in the past and enjoyed it then. But for heavier languages like Java, I've found that having a dedicated Java IDE like IntelliJ is a little bit better. And that is the end of the slideshow. So the next thing we're going to pull up is the screenshot of the results. So the results of 20 days or however long was out of 586 pings to the network. 582 of them were successful, and 4 of them failed. So that leaves us with a 99.31% uptime on my network, assuming that the network never dropped for less than 30 minutes. Because if it dropped after a ping and came back before the next ping, that would result in downtime on the network that wasn't being tracked, which is why I would ideally like to decrease that interval to about 10 minutes to get more accurate results. The more accuracy you can have, the better. And so that is my project and what I ended up doing. Thank you for watching.